Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I have to give all praise and infinite glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem HaKadosh. Yahweh be true Lord calls God, Ba'ashem Yonema, and Yahushua being true Lord and Savior, when he calls Jesus, and Lord HaKadosh, being the Holy Spirit. Double honors, apostles, and elders of great millstone, that will well, and our worthy double honors. The peace and blessing you reflect out there. Push the work of the Lord in true faith and sincerity, and promoting your bodies as a living sacrifice, showing them the Father's will. So I say this edification, exhortation, this lesson, we're gonna basically going over how, man, it's not really worth it, man, to give these people your energy, man. You know what I'm saying? And just, most importantly, man, just be the bigger person, man. Especially in the times that we're in, man, we don't got time to waste time, arguing with people, fighting people, getting into, debates, even if you're defending yourself, and you're in the right, you have to understand that when you're in this world, man, even if you do the right thing, you're still wrong in people's eyes, man, because this place is backwards, man, so it's best to just, let things slide in a way, man, you don't gotta be a big tough guy, it's like, niggas in the world, they'll talk about your mom, say something about your mom, now you want to fight a nigga and shit, and fight to the death, it's not worth it, man. We have to understand that, there's a saying, I remember teachers used to say, man, it was like sticks and bones break bones, some shit like that, and it was like, but words can never hurt me. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me, man. So at the end of the day, niggas can say all they want, they can hate, like, they can be disrespectful, I might hold the door for a nigga, niggas are demons, and they might give me a angry look. How the fuck are you gonna get mad at me for holding the door for you? Or I might tell, people, because, at the end of the day, you're supposed to have manners, man. I tell people, thank you. I tell people, have a nice day, or, good morning. They might ignore me, but at the end of the day, who gives a fuck? Do I really have to waste my time, for people who got their own problems? Because at the end of the day, you're not responsible, for people's projection and insecurities, man. You know what I'm saying? You're not responsible for any of that, man. So let niggas be niggas, man. You know what I'm saying? If you tell someone good morning and they don't answer you back, who cares? Just keep it pushing, man, because it's not worth it. And I even got inspiration. I was taking, the bus, man, and basically the driver, man, had like this little, quick altercation, a little verbal altercation with, one of the people, that was riding the bus. And the person kept telling the driver to stop, but at the end of the day, you can't tell the bus driver to stop. You have to press the button, to signal your stop or whatever, man, or stop requested. And then the person didn't do that, and then after, I noticed that, the bus driver handled the situation, with wisdom. How? Because at the end of the day, he just agreed, man, with his adversary. He wasn't trying to, yell and be like, oh, he calmly said, next time you have to press the button, and then he stopped the bus, So, and then after I asked him, because, it was very spiritual what he did, I was like, man, how are you able to stay so calm, with all these, riders, the people that ride the bus, people who are disrespectful, feel entitled to do things, He was like, man, at the end of the day, I don't waste my time, get into arguments with these people and let them win, because at the end of the day, he was like, man, I don't get paid to do that, man, and that's right, man. At the end of the day, we don't get paid, to argue with these people, man. We have no reward, for arguing with people, and wasting, time, rewarding, anger for anger, man. You don't need to do that, man. You literally gain no value, man. You literally gain no value by arguing with someone over something petty, over something small. You know what I'm saying? Someone might bump into you. You know what I'm saying? Someone might step on your Jordans. You don't gotta go shoot the nigga, man. Just handle it with wisdom, man. You know what I'm saying? Someone might, disrespect you in a way. You know, tell them calmly, man. Tell them, you know, you can either ignore them or you can tell them, you know, you could negotiate, you know, boundaries. You know, tell them, no, I don't like you doing this, man. And then if it gets, you know, to a point, you know what I'm saying, you know, where, you know, it comes that you're almost about to fight the person, you know, that's when you leave the environment. You know, you wipe the dust off thy feet. You know what I'm saying? The scriptures tell us, man, even Yahweh Shai was a prime example of being the bigger person. He had all the spiritual power. He had all the, you know, anything. He could call fire down from heaven. But at the end of the day, he didn't do it because at the end of the day, you know, Yahweh Shai said, man, if this was his kingdom, he would fight. But this is not our kingdom, man. Even if you beat a nigga's ass, sometimes I want to Wing Chun a nigga, man. You know what I'm saying? I want to Rey Mysterio a nigga. I want to RKO a nigga. You know, Triple H a nigga on some WWE shit. But at the end of the day, it's not worth it because, you know, I can risk myself going into jail. You know what I'm saying? I can get something on my record, and now I can't be the best man of the Lord I can be. Now I can't go in the highways and byways. Now I can't do lessons, you know, and feed the sheep. Why? Because I'm in jail. So it's not worth it. You know what I'm saying? You know? What if I'm on house arrest for getting into a fight? Now I can't go in the highways and byways. Now I can't link up with brothers. Now I can't do certain things. So you got to really think about that, man. That's what a lot of people don't think about, that, especially niggas, man. Niggas think in the short term. Niggas think, oh, if I beat this nigga's ass and prove I'm not a bitch, you know what I'm saying, or we'll be fine. But, you know, you got to think about the long term. You got to think about the people around you. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, we have a lot of enemies, man. You know, David said in the book of Psalms, my enemies are like the hairs on my head, man. You know how much hair follicles you have, man? It's innumerable, man. You know, you don't know, man. So, you know, you have so much enemies. If you fight one enemy, that means you got to fight the other million enemies that you have. And everybody in this world is against us, man. And we don't even have spiritual power yet, man. So we're not going to beat up all these people, man. But when the time comes, we will destroy these niggas and get our vengeance. But this is not the time for that, man. We got to be the bigger person. You know what I'm saying? You got to be able to know how to turn the other cheek because it's not worth it. Especially with these women, man. You know? If a woman is trying to disrespect, if a woman is yelling on you, if a woman is putting their hands on you and stuff, you leave, man, the situation, man. I'm to the point that, you know, now if I get into argument with someone, you know, they're trying to get physical with me, especially if it's a woman or something, I'm going to call the cops. You know what I'm saying? Because, oh, I'm going to prove I'm not a bitch to a woman by putting my hands on a woman. You know what I'm saying? And now you know what I'm saying, got something on your record. Now you in jail, man, for no reason. You know what I'm saying? It's not worth it, man. You know what I'm saying? Out here putting your hands on women and stuff, man. You know? Just let the bitch go, man. You know, if the bitch is not listening, if the bitch don't respect you, let the bitch go, man. You gotta be, you know, but that's the thing. A lot of niggas, man, they can't handle rejection. They can't, you know, they can't, like, you know what I'm saying? They just tolerate disrespect. You know what I'm saying? Because you have to understand, even if you try to fight a person, even if you try to, you know, argue with that person, you are, what was I gonna say? You are reinforcing that behavior, man. You know, I've been dealing with a lot of animals a lot, you know what I'm saying, to the point where I actually train certain animals, like, you know, like cats and stuff. And one thing you have to realize is that even if you're trying to, you know, discipline a cat or something like that, you may try to yell at it, but sometimes yelling doesn't help anything. Yelling actually reinforces the behavior even more, you know? A lot of times, you know, animals learn by redirection, you know, especially an animal like a cat. You know, it doesn't really learn from punishment, you know what I'm saying? So you have to redirect its attention somewhere else, or you got to take a step back, you know, you got to pull something away, you know what I'm saying? So there's a thing in psychology called, negative punishment. And it's not like the way you think, you know what I'm saying? It's actually when you take a stimulus away, you know what I'm saying? So if it's like, it could be your attention, for example, even with animals. If that animal is pretty clingy, or even a person could be clingy, you know what I'm saying? If they're not respecting you, if they're, you know, going, you know, against a certain boundary that you have, that's when you pull away your attention, you know? So that's a way, you know what I'm saying, to establish, you know, boundaries and teach, you know, animal or just any organism, any living thing is, but sometimes you gotta take away your attention, you know, and that's how people respect you more. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes that's all it takes, you know, because sometimes when you argue, when you fight, you know what I'm saying, back and stuff like that, you're just adding fire to fire. You know, sometimes, you know, it's not always good to throw water, you know what I'm saying, on something that's on fire, because it's gonna ignite the fire even more, you know? So sometimes, you know, you notice people just pack, you know, a nigga might have, you know, their shoe on fire. You notice that they pack the shoe down, you know, or you notice when people have a cigarette, they throw it on the ground, and what do? They step on it gently, you know what I'm saying, to get rid of that fire. And that's what you got to do, you know, because at the end of the day, negatives attract, you know what I'm saying, a negative and, you know, Salat, my bad. Yeah, opposites attract, you know, so a positive and a negative, you know, attracts, man. You know what I'm saying? You know, positive, you know, a positive and negative attract. So opposites attract. So at the end of the day, if you angry and the other person's angry, nothing, it's not gonna fix anything, man. But if you come in peace, you know what I'm saying, you be the bigger person, you know what I'm saying, you know, you no longer, you know, feed that person that attention. A lot of people, you have to understand, they're energy drainers. So when you argue with them, they get even more power, man. You know, they get even more stronger, man. So it's best to ignore, you know what I'm saying, people, man. You know, even in sports, the greatest players, man, are psychological masters, because when people try to get into their head, you don't see them trying to fight. You don't see a nigga like Kobe try to fight niggas. He was just ignoring niggas, man. You know what I'm saying? And then that would get to the opponent's head even more, because they expected a reaction. So the whole goal is to not give people a reaction, man. Because even if you beat a nigga's ass, even if you win the argument, you never really win in the end. Everybody looks at us as the villain either way, you know? So you gotta be the bigger person, man. You know, you gotta be the bigger person, you know? Even looking at Batman. Batman has a rule, a no killing rule, right? You know what I'm saying? A lot of people might be mad. They're like, oh, why does it Batman just kill the Joker and get it over with? But at the end of the day, it's not that easy, man. Because what if he does kill Joker? Niggas are gonna be like, oh, Batman's a murderer, we can't trust him. You know, so people can't make their mind, man. People are confused. So at the end of the day, you just gotta be the bigger person, man. Because, you know, even if you do the right thing, man, you still lose at the end of the day. Even if you win, you lose, man. You know? So at the end of the day, brothers, man, you know, this is a quick little, little lesson, you know, something I just meditated on, man. Just be the bigger person, man. You know, the times that we're in, you know, it's best to just, you know, be wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove, you know, because at the end of the day, we can't blow our cover. It's like Clark Kent. Clark Kent is Superman, right? If someone tries to, you know, press, you know, or try to, you know, provoke Superman to anger, he's gonna blow his cover if he fights back as Clark Kent. I'm like, oh, what the fuck? When were you this strong, you know? So you gotta be smart, brothers, man. You know, keep the faith, man. You know, above all, death to America, man.